What if I told you that CIA flamethrower tanks destroyed Soviet fortresses during the Cold War? How could this weapon change the course of history and the strategies of the US and the USSR? These aren't myths, but real operations that you'll learn about today. The CIA initiated a series of secret operations where flamethrower tanks became the main weapon against Soviet fortifications. A secret CIA document, T-4559-X, stated, Operation Fire Purgatory could reveal the greatest secret of the Cold War. These tanks, equipped with flamethrowers, were capable of destroying fortifications that could not be penetrated by artillery or airstrikes. We will uncover the secrets of this operation, from the development of the flamethrower tanks to how they changed the CIA's military strategy in the fight against the Soviet Union. This video will dive into the shocking details of secret missions that could have changed the course of the Cold War. Learn how these tanks became an important part of global strategy and why their history remains classified to this day. After World War II, the world entered a new era, the Cold War. The first superpower that emerged from this global catastrophe was the Soviet Union. The second was the United States of America. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in history, where the struggle for global dominance turned into a battle of ideologies, systems, and strategies. The defining feature of the Cold War was an atmosphere of total distrust and fear. While the US and the Soviet Union did not engage in open warfare, they stood on the brink of global catastrophe. It was a time of nuclear threats, espionage, psychological warfare, and a technological arms race. The US and the USSR fought for strategic and technological supremacy across all fields, from space exploration to new weapon types. At the same time, every move and decision had geopolitical significance, and the more secrets were revealed, the greater the fear that gripped both nations. It is impossible to overestimate how much each decision cost during the Cold War. This was a game on the edge, where every step was filled with uncertainty. Decisions made at the highest levels had the potential to cause a global catastrophe. Official news sources, such as AP News and TASS, constantly emphasized this atmosphere of uncertainty. The world on the brink of war. A new escalation in the arms race. These topics left no doubt about what was at stake. At the beginning of 1953, after the death of Joseph Stalin and the political shift in the USSR, the United States received orders to modernize its military power and prepare for a possible expansion of Soviet aggression. The CIA realized that to maintain strategic advantage, they needed not only to improve nuclear weapons, but also to focus on new types of weapons for fighting Soviet fortifications and protecting their strategic bases. It was at this point that a project emerged, which, at first glance, seemed fantastic, but was about to revolutionize warfare. This project was the flamethrower tanks, a new weapon designed to fight well-fortified Soviet positions. Under the codename Thunderstorm, they began developing technology capable of destroying even the most robust Soviet bunkers built deep underground. According to the first documents found in CIA archives, in 1954, they received the first orders to test flamethrower tanks, specialized tanks designed to emit streams of burning liquid to destroy enemy fortifications. This development was meant to counter the strategies of Soviet forces, who were actively building underground fortresses and shelters. The first use of the flamethrower tank in practice was shocking for American engineers. During testing, the weapon encountered serious technical issues, particularly with fuel delivery, leading to dangerous situations. However, the potential of this weapon was clear. By 1954, it became evident that to force the USSR to reconsider its strategic plans, the United States had to create new means of warfare capable of penetrating the deepest fortifications. The initial tests of the flamethrower tanks revealed many shortcomings, and these issues became the main subject of internal discussions at the CIA. A significant cause for concern was the unreliability of the fuel delivery system. The system did not always function correctly, especially in cold conditions, which put the success of operations at risk. In 1955, the CIA organized a special operation under the codename Tiger to test the flamethrower tanks in real combat conditions. The operation took place in environments resembling Soviet defense structures and aimed to demonstrate the effectiveness of the new weapon. However, due to technical problems and the lack of adequate armor for the tank crew, the initial results were negative. This became a serious problem for the CIA team, and they realized that significant changes had to be made to the tank's design. The first attempt to deploy flamethrower tanks on a large scale was unsuccessful, but this did not stop the CIA. On the contrary, critical feedback from field agents, who were conducting operational checks on the new weapon, led to the development of new technologies and improvements to the tanks, which would become a cornerstone of U.S. strategy. By the mid-1960s, the CIA had refined its strategies and technologies to deal with increasingly complex Soviet fortifications. Flamethrower tanks became an essential element of this strategy, capable of breaking through even the toughest defensive lines. They became the answer to invisible underground fortresses, where Soviet forces could safely store their power away from external attacks for extended periods. What initially seemed like an unconventional and risky project became the foundation of a new strategy. Ultimately, flamethrower tanks became a symbol of the relentless battle waged by the CIA against the Soviet bloc, and for many, it marked the first step in understanding how important next-generation strategic weapons could be. Technical obstacles were overcome, and after final refinements, flamethrower tanks began to be used in real combat situations in both Europe and Latin America. Thus, this new type of weapon became one of the elements that changed the course of the Cold War and, perhaps, one of the most dangerous tools in the CIA's arsenal. Munich, 1967. A secret meeting is held in a concealed underground club. Marcel Bonart, an external service agent of the CIA, receives orders that will turn everything he knew upside down. His task is to organize the transit of a new type of weapon, flamethrower tanks, across Europe. Every step in this project must remain undetected by enemies, so as not to reveal secrets that could change the course of the Cold War if it fails. For several days, he remains in the shadows, repeatedly refining his strategy for moving flamethrower tanks, a top-secret weapon that could influence the strategic balance in Europe. The weapon was so innovative that even those who developed it did not know its full potential. Therefore, special attention had to be paid to transportation and ensuring maximum security. The secret routes for transport through Europe had long been known only to a few agents and partners within the network. The first stop was Spain, where the flamethrower tanks were to pass through the Pyrenees, leaving no trace that could attract the attention of Soviet spies. Bonart, knowing the importance of his mission, gathered all the necessary information about potential threats along the route. All materials and documents related to the flamethrowers had to be transported through Spain before reaching South America. The fire purgatory operation demanded absolute confidentiality. While it might have seemed like a standard operation on the surface, every stage of this mission was fraught with deadly risk. The start of Operation Zoraya marked a real turning point for Marcel Bonart. The CIA had established connections with a French underground boss, Michel Delacroix, a key figure in the world of weapons smuggling. His network, known by the codename Rambo, specialized in organizing operations that required an extremely high degree of secrecy. Delacroix had significant influence in the region, and his network was well integrated into Spain's ports, enabling the smooth transit of weapons through key strategic points. Given the importance of ensuring flamethrower tanks didn't fall into Soviet hands, Delacroix's role was indispensable. The operation required constant oversight to ensure the transfer remained undiscovered by local authorities or potential spies. Contracts signed by Delacroix and the CIA were kept under the strictest secrecy. All documents related to the flamethrower tanks, their delivery and missions were encrypted. Key operational data was stored only in coded messages, transmitted via Rambo. For those with access to these documents, the world seemed safer, as these flamethrowers were designed to become a primary tool in confronting the Soviet Union in the coming decades. A key moment occurred when the CIA uncovered a secret letter marked Operation W5. The letter, which seemed like a regular report at first glance, turned out to be a crucial piece of evidence revealing aspects of the Flamethrower tank project. The document was marked Top Secret, indicating its high importance. It disclosed that after crossing the Pyrenees, the Flamethrower tanks were to be sent to South America, where local anti-communist forces were to receive them for upcoming operations. For Marcel Bonnard, this was a critical moment. If this letter fell into the wrong hands, the entire operation would be at risk. He knew that now, every movement had to be cautious, every step weighed carefully. The encrypted message confirmed that during Operation W5, flamethrowers would be used as part of a large-scale anti-communist campaign aimed at neutralizing Soviet sympathizers in Latin America. While important, this document was just a part of a complex mechanism that had to function in perfect harmony. On August 3, 1970, Marcel Bonnard arrived in Argentina. For the CIA, this was another crucial step in implementing Operation Firestorm. Argentina was not just a hiding place for flamethrowers, but a strategic hub for future operations, where further arms redistribution and power shifts would support anti-communist movements. The contact to be made in Argentina was Don Rafael Gutierrez, code RG-21, who was well known among local forces as a leader of the network organizing such contracts. Gutierrez became the bridge between the CIA and local forces, actively fighting the rise of communist influence. Argentina became a key location for the first flamethrower tank training and preparations for a major counter-revolution in Latin America. After a successful meeting with Gutierrez and clarifying the details of the upcoming operations, Bonnard handed over control of this part of the project to local agents. From this moment, it was clear that Operation Firestorm was entering its decisive stage. The completion of this mission in Latin America would become the first link in a larger chain of operations that, according to the CIA's plan, would alter not just South America's strategic landscape, but the global political map as well. After the hero left the luxurious salons of Berlin and vanished from the political stage of Europe, he found himself in Argentina, where everything that once seemed familiar and reliable now looked like a different reality. This was a country where war had left a deep mark on the souls of many, yet also a place where one could find peace after the scorched earth of political battles. The first months after his escape, when it was still unclear how exactly he should act to remain unseen, he tried to find the lost normalcy. The evenings in Berlin, when he would walk the red carpet, drink champagne in elite clubs, and converse with high-ranking politicians and businessmen, now became mere memories. They no longer held any significance, as all the grandeur of the world he had known was cast aside. In the city where every step could become fatal, only silence remained. And behind those night skies, he sought nothing but salvation. From those evenings under the bright lights of luxurious chandeliers, only memories remained. Now, he spent his nights in one of the abandoned ranches on the edge of the Argentinian steppes. The large house, once a refuge for wealthy businessmen, now seemed like a desolate place where every sound echoed in his heart, leaving an echo of bitterness from the losses. Around him stood loneliness, and the feeling of isolation grew stronger each day. The paranoid suspicion never left the hero even during the day, but at night it took on a more intense form. Strangely, the more time he spent in this remote place, the more he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. In his memories of the luxurious salons of Berlin, he occasionally recalled moments when friends and partners were near, who could turn into enemies at any time. All those years spent in the world of espionage became part of his paranoia. Unexpectedly, the agent began checking his guests using the code V6. The feeling that he was constantly under surveillance became a constant theme in his thoughts. Anyone who came to his ranch was thoroughly checked. His internal security system didn't allow for anything to be left to chance. He observed their behavior, noticing small details that might indicate their connections. The decision was harsh, but fair. No agent should move freely in this world without vigilance, he thought as he monitored every contact. Additionally, the agent decided to check his phone calls to find out if anyone was using them to encrypt important messages. This was another step to increase vigilance. He ordered his subordinate to check the records of every phone call he received. All these measures were aimed at uncovering potential spies who might have infiltrated even his closest circle. Every sound in the morning that disturbed the silence made him look around warily. The personal cook who had prepared his dinner also became suspicious. At night, after everyone had gone to sleep, he secretly checked the details about his maid and other staff members. Check passwords, even the cook. He couldn't afford any mistakes. Day by day, he became more closed off, more paranoid. Sleepless nights became a routine for him. He woke up in the middle of the night sweating from dreams of traitors and old friends who turned out to be enemies. Phone calls from completely unfamiliar numbers added even more sleeplessness, which already haunted him. The Neustein porcelain, which shattered at the sound of his heartbeat, became a symbol of his anxiety. Every time he heard it, he felt his nerves jolt with fear. The anxiety increased when he received a call from an unknown number. Someone was looking for him? This was more than just anxiety. It was real panic. Could they betray him? These unknown calls were becoming increasingly threatening, and he had a feeling his time in Argentina might end very soon. Since he received that message, every call and every movement in the house were filled with fear. He couldn't ignore the alarm, even when he no longer had the strength to fight it. Every signal that came pointed to one possible issue. He had to raise the alarm and start acting preemptively. Was this really a threat? These questions became his daily companions. This internal conflict became a heavy burden. The seemingly calm nights in Argentina turned into sleepless and terrifying ones. Living in constant tension, the hero not only became isolated from the world but also broke down psychologically. He could no longer trust even the closest people he worked with. After all, anyone could be a foreign intelligence agent, putting his mission in jeopardy. The first records regarding the flamethrower tanks appeared in CIA archives in 1955, but they were marked by a large number of damaged and partially lost documents. The preserved reports mention the initial failed attempts to create this new weapon. These documents confirm that effective flamethrowers were still a long way off, and it wasn't until several years after the first developments that the project began to gain real strength. The reports note that the initial experiments had serious technical problems. These difficulties were related to the instability of the fuel delivery system and the tank's design, which reduced the flamethrower's effectiveness in combat conditions. According to internal reports, the first tests on European test sites showed that the weapon could not perform its task in low temperatures and within Soviet defensive structures. These initial failures raised doubts about the viability of using flamethrower tanks in large operations. Only in the mid-1960s, after numerous refinements, significant successes were achieved, leading to the mass production of flamethrower tanks. Other preserved archive documents provide information about the first trials in southern Europe and attempts to adapt the technology to combat conditions different from those the American forces were accustomed to. They showed that flamethrower tanks were particularly effective against underground structures, which were a key feature of Soviet fortifications in Eastern Europe. These facts helped shape the final vision of how flamethrower tanks would be used during the Cold War. Dr. Maria Kovalenko, one of the leading researchers in the history of military operations, points out that CIA archives contain 17 indirect pieces of evidence that confirm the development of flamethrowers as early as the late 1950s. She emphasizes that, although direct documents confirming the development are absent, numerous mentions in agent reports and intercepted radio communications allow for the conclusion of their existence. These pieces of evidence include descriptions of operational plans developed to fight Soviet fortifications and mentions of flamethrower use during major maneuvers across Central Europe. Professor Oscar Mendoza, a historian from Buenos Aires, also investigated documents related to the use of flamethrower tanks in Latin America. According to his findings, American flamethrowers were used in secret operations in countries where the U.S. supported anti-communist regimes. Mendoza emphasizes that although official sources do not confirm widely known facts, Buenos Aires archives contain numerous mentions of the presence of this weapon in Argentina and other countries that became key allies of the U.S. in the fight against Soviet influence in Latin America. Both researchers agree that, despite the lack of full documentation, numerous indirect pieces of evidence and archive records confirm the existence of the secret development of flamethrower tanks and their use as part of the Cold War strategy of the U.S. In this section, we will compare two key versions about the creation and use of flamethrowers during the Cold War. The official version, based on CIA documents, confirms that flamethrowers were developed as part of a secret project, with their primary role focused on fighting Soviet fortifications in Europe. According to this version, flamethrowers became part of many significant operations, particularly in the framework of a limited nuclear weapon use strategy, which involved using less powerful but extremely effective means to destroy strategic targets. The alternative version, proposed by researcher Salgado, based on Latin American archives, indicates that flamethrowers were not only used to destroy Soviet defensive lines, but also as part of a broader CIA strategy to fight communist regimes in Latin America. According to this version, the use of flamethrowers in Latin America was part of a large-scale operation aimed at strengthening anti-communist forces and eliminating Soviet sympathizers at strategic points on the continent. According to Salgado's archives, during operations in countries such as Argentina, Chile, and Colombia, flamethrowers were used to destroy underground fortifications, fortified bases, and other objects where communist or leftist groups actively supporting Soviet ideology were stationed. Despite the fact that many documents today confirm the existence of flamethrowers and their use during the Cold War, there remain many unresolved moments. The exact circumstances under which these flamethrowers were developed, who directly managed the project, and how these tanks were used on the battlefield in real conditions remain unclear. Classified documents, particularly part of the archive containing Soviet responses to the use of flamethrowers, do not provide a clear picture of their effective use in combat. Other questions concern the use of these tanks in Latin America, where their role and impact on the political situation remain controversial. Another question that has yet to be definitively confirmed is the actual involvement of flamethrowers in global military operations, which may still be hidden in archives to this day. There are still many documents that have never been disclosed, and these are likely to shed light on the ultimate goals of CIA operations and the role of flamethrowers in their execution. Therefore, it can be firmly stated that many aspects of this secret project remain shrouded in secrecy to this day. Operation Firestorm had been hanging on the verge of disclosure for months. Every step, every document that reached the agent's hands became a critical part of a global game, where he had no room for error. The hero, increasingly feeling the weight of responsibility for executing this operation, began to realize that even the slightest leak of information could lead to an international scandal, calling into question not only his reputation, but also the integrity of an entire nation. The task was extremely delicate, as the operation involved the most secret aspects of the Cold War, including the development of a weapon that could change the balance of power. Disclosure of the information would not only destroy the plan, but could also lead to serious consequences for diplomatic relations between the U.S. and other nations. If the world found out that the CIA and the U.S. military used flamethrower tanks to carry out covert missions, it would become not only a military but also a political scandal. The explosive use of these tanks could raise questions about international morality and the rules of warfare that the U.S. was trying to uphold on the global stage. At this moment, as the hero reviewed internal documents again, he stumbled upon an excerpt from document D47, which became a symbol of the tension in his state of mind. This letter contained a phrase that, if the Firestorm case were disclosed, the entire project would be annulled, and its participants would face immediate prosecution. If the case becomes public, the enemy killed status will be cancelled. This was an acknowledgement that all previous efforts and risks could be nullified. Each day left little chance for everything to remain under control, as the documents not only confirmed the existence of flamethrower tanks, but also included evidence of their widespread use, which could influence global politics. This realization was further intensified by how quickly secrets could be revealed. One of the most critical moments came when data on case number 3245, which was supposed to be revealed back in 1951, was uncovered. The hero repeatedly wondered how his CIA colleagues had tried to keep the truth hidden. The operation was gaining momentum, and its consequences were becoming increasingly global. Due to the censorship that was the standard for many confidential documents at the time, the case was nearly sent for publication. But 3 minutes before the broadcast, a top-secret letter was received and detained. This delay allowed them to maintain control of the information, but it also raised the question, what exactly were these documents hiding, and could the secret be kept for much longer? With every new phase of the operation, the hero increasingly felt like part of something much bigger, a political game with unimaginably high stakes. At the same time, he realized he was no longer just an agent, but part of a global machine, where every step had multiple consequences. Gradually, he began to understand that even CIA colleagues could be enemies, capable of betrayal at any moment. This fear was fueled by growing suspicions and tension among the agents, where anyone could be the one to pass information to the enemy or reveal a secret that would destroy everything. Too many people depended on the success of this operation. In a world where betrayal and trust made everything unstable, his internal conflict reached its peak. If he was to maintain his position and security, he had to be cautious with every step. But even this was not a guarantee. Surveillance technology, intelligence networks, and information interception, all of this could turn against him. The risk of being targeted by foreign intelligence or even his own colleagues became constant. He knew that revealing even one part of this operation could turn him into a target for the CIA itself. The realization that the entire operation could be exposed, even by his colleagues, became the point at which the hero felt like part of a global political game, where every move could cost him not only his reputation, but his life. It was a moment when he understood. In this game, victory could only be achieved if all the pieces on the chessboard stayed in place. Long nights, filled with solitude, became a real trial for him. The hero felt that he could no longer trust his allies. Everything that once seemed familiar and reliable now became just a shadow, something he had to fight. The more he thought about it, the more he realized. Even the most loyal agents could be used to achieve political goals, even at the cost of their ideals. At these moments, he was no longer sure if he could escape this trap. The more he felt the trust in his mission melting away, the more the surrounding world seemed more dangerous. We have arrived at a shocking fact, one that unfortunately remains in the shadows. In the CIA archives, there are over 1,500 documents that are still classified and unknown to the public. These documents, never disclosed, contain countless details about an operation that could have changed the course of the Cold War, and even served as a decisive factor in the global balance of power. Operation Firestorm, with its innovative weapons and strategic maneuvers, was never meant to be known to the public. Even decades after the project was completed, the CIA is still unwilling to fully disclose all materials related to these operations. These documents, according to experts, provide evidence that flamethrower tanks were not only developed and tested, but also used in many secret operations. They contain information about a series of tests and the specific use of flamethrowers in combat conditions, where their role was significant. The CIA archives, which became part of this secret, are a source of vast amounts of information that is still unavailable for public investigation. This all remained secret for decades, because disclosing this information could cause not only a diplomatic scandal, but also seriously affect international relations. But despite these obstacles, the only thing that remained in the minds of those directly involved in these operations was an undeniable fact. War has no rules. No matter how the world changed, such operations left an indelible mark on the lives of those involved in them. Now, after all the years spent, the agent, who now lives in Argentina, recalls, "I lost my identity, but I didn't lose the fight." What does that mean? It means that despite all the rejections, losses, and disappointments, he remained part of the global political game that influenced the course of history. His fight wasn't in vain, but it also became something larger than a personal war. It became part of the larger political mechanism that was invisibly moving the world behind the scenes. Every agent, every document, every operation, this was part of a massive machine that had always been hidden from the public eye. And no matter how much we want to know the full truth, we still have doubts. Doubts about what we've been told. Doubts about the official version of events. Maybe the real history has always remained unknown. And now the question to you: are you ready to doubt the official version of this story? Can we trust what's shown to us on the surface when it could all be part of a huge lie concealing the real intrigues? Now that you've learned a part of these shocking facts, I want to hear your opinion. Share in the comments. Do you believe the official version, or do you think the truth has been hidden from us? What are your thoughts on this case? Are you ready to believe what has been revealed? Or are you ready to question the entire official version that's being presented to us? This is just the beginning. We are only trying to uncover one of the darkest secrets of the Cold War. Next time, we'll dive into revealing even more shocking facts. In the next episode, revealing shocking NKVD operations, secrets of the Seville Archive, case number N09. Don't miss it. This will be another discovery that will change your view of history.